The second round of elections is here, and INEC has assured everyone that it will do better than the presidential elections. Security is one of the concerns, from not having enough to having too much, like the military presence, most especially in Rivers State. David.
And reports reaching us from Kaduna also says that there was pandemonium as gunshots were heard and residents, electoral officials scampered for safety. We'll also bring you updates of that once we have that. And we're still having in our studio Dr. Tui Meibawodu. Now, Dr. Tui, security cannot be waved aside. We saw what played out on February 23rd. And just a few hours yesterday night at about 9:30 p.m. in Kaduna, that's Manchok, within the Kaura local government area of Kaduna State, and there was pandemonium because some robbers went to attack a kiosk. Whether or not that was just how do I use it? Scare tactics, so to speak, but they knew that there were electoral officers there who were sorting materials close by, and although they say the officials scampered for safety, had to leave the materials there, but they only went to attend to the money from the kiosk. Do you think they could have tampered with the materials there, and INEC isn't telling us anything from that perspective?
Well, it's good because, again, let's look at the process of getting of election and then counting of the whole thing. It will probably be quite a bit difficult because now you've not started voting. You're still going to vote, authentication, signature, and then the thing has to be taken to the collation center before the result is finally declared. So that sort of attack, even while they're trying to sort the materials before voting.
Maybe just to shake INEC a little bit.
I'm sure INEC are overwhelmed already. I mean, they can't, because they can easily, invoke any of their own, any of the laws to cover them and say that, listen, this election here cannot be credible at this part of this local government. We're going to cancel it, or we're going to do a rerun of that election. So they have, all sort of lacuna to hide under.
But this is pre-election now. During the election proper now, we also noticed that, for example, what happened in Okota and other areas, the electoral officers had to scamper for safety as well, leaving the materials there. So these were ordinary unused materials. Now, when it gets used again, what should be the approach this time around? Who is supposed to really protect? Because security call for reinforcement. We are not having that. And we also have reports that some persons in Kwara and residents in Kwara and other northeastern states were shocked when they had the aerial surveillance going on and they started scampering for safety, also thinking something was wrong. So what level of engagement and reinforcement would you expect so that we don't have INEC officials having to leave the ballot?
Again, it's important that the security will need to, intercourse or relate to the people on the ground. If you have to do an area surveillance, it should be known to the people. There must really be an announcement that, okay, if you hear some unusual movement, don't panic, because we're trying to do this check and ensure that you're secure. And then and then waiting for that critical time to start doing air surveillance, you're going to create panic. I think they should measure the impact of any of the security maneuver they're going to carry out on the people and on the possibility of them having the confidence to come out and run election and the impact on the election. It is important because you cannot then just throw people out, throw security people around and then cause confusion and then scare people from voting or staying on the queue. So I think at a level, there must be that level of communication or even an announcement that don't worry, we're just here for, to make sure that you are secure, so that people can have a little bit of confidence in the security. Yeah. But what we've seen is a yawning gap between, the security, even the INEC people, and the
But then the police would tell you they have personnel problems. 30,000 to every state, but we could see in the last elections, there were not enough. But let's talk about the army getting involved in politics. Now, the Constitution clearly states that the army has no business whatsoever in elections. Yes, their duty is to secure our borders from external threat. But let's use River State as a case in question. Now, this has happened over and over again, not just in 2015. I think it happened under the Jonathan administration too. But in recent times, Rivers has become, the major, place where there's violence or unrest. And we heard in the last election there was a soldier who was killed as a result of the uncertainties. As of Thursday, people were complaining about the fact that they were seeing soldiers on the streets, high number of them. Some of them, we saw pictures of soldiers driving into supermarkets, hotels, and all of that. What's your take on the army taking over River State, in quote?
The simple point is this. We are in a kind of unusual situation. Let me put it that way. One, we're not having sufficient police to police our election and even police the nation. We don't have sufficient police. So normally what we should have done really is to increase the number of police and prepare security for the election. Secondly, insecurity in the country is heightened, from the Bono fringes down to the river, Akwa Ibom, Bayelsa, rivers, and even in Oyo here. So we're seeing the escalation of those security challenge, in all these areas all around the country, not just during election, even before election. We saw the challenge of herdsmen. We saw all those things. Then we may not the way. As much as we don't want military involvement in this election process, we know that at this time, the insecurity in the country is heightened because of desperation of political godfathers. Now, that of Rivers becomes really, really very worrisome because one, the two leading political parties, one is not fielding candidates, so we're just having one candidate as it were, in quotes. And then why should we not be having security challenge in the place? Now, if we
shouldn't that just be a close to victory?
Yes. If we move back,
although there are other participants in the candidates,
if we move back a bit, we've seen that Rivers always have these challenges, security challenges, but this time it's getting heightened. What should be our response, to ensure that people that are coming to vote can actually give it the chance to vote, they can have the peace of mind to vote. So, the deployment of the military should be such that they are taken away from the core center of voting. Maybe the streets are some areas where those hoodlums can come in and hijack things.
But that's on the day of elections.
Yes, on the day of elections. 2
days to elections.
Maybe.
How does this affect the people who are supposed to come out to vote, the normal residents of that state, where tankers and armored cars or army vehicles loaded with soldiers are parading the city, randomly arresting people allegedly? How are the people supposed to feel?
There's no excuse for us to deploy military during election. We don't have excuse for that. We shouldn't have excuse for that. Let me use that word. But what we're seeing is that what options do we have? We don't have sufficient police. And look at it now. We increased the death toll. We've not finished this election. The last election, we had about 100 people dying in 2015. Okay? But we don't want to increase death toll from election processes. What is our response? What are we supposed to do? The intelligence gathering that's supposed to help the thing is not happening. The government that's supposed to manage this security thing, despite the fact that the security votes kept increasing, we're not seeing security in the country. So it's a big issue, which honestly every stakeholder in Rivers should get together and address as soon as possible, because this thing has a way of increasing and escalating to an uncomfortable level that can further affect every part of the country. Okay, so it is important that moving from here, we should be able to have conversation on what should be the way to manage security during election.
Okay.
Right.
Now we have information just reaching us that the presidential governorship candidate of the People's Democratic Party is about to cast his vote at his polling unit.
He just showed up. Let's take a look. Well, we apologize for that mix-up. Apparently, that is Jimmy Agbaje's polling unit.
Yes, it's yet to arrive.
Yeah, the officials have arrived. They're putting their stuff
Setting up
together,
the materials.
of course, and we can see that there are also people who are out there waiting for them to get their acts together so they can actually cast their votes. So we will be keeping our eyes on that polling unit so that we could, get more information.
And that was polling unit 021 on Ligali Ayorinde Street. INEC officials arrive at 8 a.m. We have the video now coming through. Okay, now, so we can see the INEC officials arriving at polling unit 021 on Ligali Ayorinde Street. INEC officials arrive in just a few minutes past 8 o'clock. And they're also trying to set up as well. You see the youth's core members there trying to set up their tables and ensure that they kickstart the electoral process.
Well, I'm still going to hold this over INEC's head, the fact that they said they were going to have some form of uniformity with the time as to when they will all arrive across the country.
I think Lagos is just a little slow because during the last elections as well, last 2 weeks, Lagos started a little late. It was until around 9-10 a.m. before we settled, and then we kicked in aggressively with the election.
We're wondering what INEC's challenge would be, but in case you're just watching, that's polling unit 021 on Ligali Ayorinde Street. INEC officials arrived a little later after 8 o'clock, and they're still setting up. Hopefully, if that's your polling unit, you'd be there, to vote. But we still have.
You also have to send your iReport feature, Marianne. Take us through that as well.
Please don't forget to be a reporter. You can be our iReporter today on Plus TV Africa. Just go on our WhatsApp. The number is going to be flashed on your screen in a bit. You could go on WhatsApp, send us a video, send us pictures. Let us know exactly what's happening in your polling unit. If there's any hanky-panky, let us know. If they're doing great, the INEC officials are doing great, please feel free to, send us that information. You can tweet at us at Plus TV Africa. You can tweet, you can send a Facebook message on Facebook at Plus TV Africa. But most importantly, report the news with us on our WhatsApp. Send us your story. We want you to be our reporter today. And
remember to have your name and exact location. Details of that are very important. Dr. Tui, now you see them setting up there as well. That's just a street away, isn't it? What's also your anticipation? This is just one of the areas across the different local government areas of Lagos State, and we are still setting up, not yet ready to kickstart.
For me, I'm just trying to imagine what it would be like in the fringes of Lagos State, because we shouldn't always assume that Lagos State is this cosmopolitan area we're seeing, VI, Ikoyi, Ikeja.
But can it be excusable that even though we don't start at 8 o'clock on the dot, that Lagos at about 10 o'clock, everybody now wakes up and smells the coffee and say, well, rise and shine, let's go out and vote? Because we saw there were throngs of people coming out as at 10 o'clock last 2 weeks.
Last 2 weeks, even, I remember, we were doing the monitoring in one of the federal radio stations, and we found out that even in some places, at Egbeda, as at 11 people were, the voting has not commenced. So, and I was wondering what it would be like in a place like Farasime, close to the border there, or in place like Okegun at the waterfront, extreme of Ekpede. I was trying to wonder what it would be like. And this is a state that you can easily, manage logistics, because it's not really a bad terrain. You can easily manage the logistics. And we're seeing this kind of performance from INEC. We need to honestly up our game. We must commit ourselves to high standard if we really want to move forward.
INEC officials also added, they also added that one of the issues with the delay was that they needed security officials to follow them, and then as at some point within the last election, the directive now had to come from the police or whoever was escorting them and say, well, you have to wait additionally for some time till we have the security operative escort you. So maybe it's not necessarily INEC's fault or the ad hoc staff's fault for not being present, but the security escort here this time around.
Those are conjectures, because we have, apart from having 4 years, we have 2 weeks. We saw what happened last time. We had 2 weeks. There must be an appraiser after the first election to look at where are our gaps, how do we, bridge these gaps. So did we really do an appraiser? What were the lessons? What are the takeaways from those appraisers? So we can't then start, manufacturing excuses for these people for not doing the work they ought to do. At least the last time I remember, they had 2 weeks to look at this and then say, okay, we have another week to do this election. It's not that they did the election last week and are doing another one this week. And besides, this is Lagos, for goodness sake. This is Lagos, and it's a close-knit place. If you want to drive from here to Badagry now, in this where there's no traffic now, it's less than an hour. So why do we now have difficulty? You've moved the materials to a nearby safe location, where you can then deploy to the polling unit. So what is the problem again?
Miriam, do you remember during the last conversation where we were talking about doing a review of the February 23rd polls, one of our guests said, within one of the polling units, I can't remember the exact polling unit, but in Ajao Estates, yes, they arrived late and it was anticipated that the INEC officials were going to kickstart the election process, but only for them to know that 3 ballot boxes came without...
Yeah, 2 out of the 3
came
without covers. And the people said, well, we're not going to vote because we're not sure that these boxes are safe. Yes, exactly. So in cases like that, how do you deal with it? Well, just before you answer that question, we hear that President Muhammadu Buhari has cast his vote in his hometown, Daura, in Katsina State. Mr. President always gets to cast the vote first.
He's the number one citizen.
We hear that the president arrived at his polling unit at about 8 a.m. in the company of his wife, Aisha Buhari. After casting his vote, he addressed and fielded questions from journalists. He said he's not surprised that his victory at the February 23 elections is being challenged on the fears of possible violence during the governorship elections. The president said that he is leaving it to the security agencies to tackle. I wish we could get a video from that, but thank goodness we have this report. We will bring you the video as we go on the show. So again, we're talking about INEC's level of preparedness. The president always casts his votes before everybody else. Well, that's impressive.
Leadership by example,
looking at it across boards, all the way to Lagos and Akwa Ibom and every other place, is it eye service that INEC is doing? Again, I wanted to ask a question before we went on the break. On February 23, in fact, February 16, we started talking about, oh, INEC did this wrong, they did this wrong, let's see how we can do better. And 23rd came after the logistic pause. And we still talked about the same thing. And I'm sitting here and we're still talking about the same thing. You cannot keep doing the same thing expecting a different response, can you?
And we just have the video footage there, Marianne, the president.
Mr. President. So why does INEC seem to be going through or running around in the same circles and keep assuring us that they could do better? And every single time we give that opportunity, we get worse.
Again, the point is that I expect at a certain level, both at the legislative and some level at the executive, for an appraiser we must be able to have appraiser, we must be able to put the INEC chairman on the hot seat and raise critical questions about his performance.
There are resident electoral commissioners.
Yes, so whether our resident electoral commissioner in the state, the INEC chairman is their boss, we must be able to put them on hot seat. Even the REC at the level of the State House of Assemblies, we must be able to put them on hot seat and for them to answer questions and find out why they have to put us through this kind of situation.
But don't you think that in answering questions, we should start right from the polling officer, then we can go to the resident electoral commissioner?
We don't need that.
There's a chain of individuals. You can't just
we don't need that. There's what they call leadership in every structure. In a state, the leadership is the resident electoral commissioner. At the federal level, it is the INEC chairman. They must be able to answer questions. You know, every laxity, because that should be conditioned on them retaining. They are listening. You cannot just appoint them without performance and say, okay, go and spend 4 years, whether you do well or you don't do well. You must be able to have that kind of thing that can ask, you know, they must be able to answer questions. The question is not just going to be from the legislators or lawmakers alone, but even from the social solidarity group, from media. We'll put them on seat and rate them. Because if you don't rate performance,
they say talk is cheap.
We have to keep talking. What do we do again?
We're very good at preferring solutions or ideas. We come up with these interesting ideas, which are very, very laudable. But the truth is, we do not have an antecedent of accountability. So who's going to put INEC on that hot seat if we haven't done that in other sectors of, you know, the country? Why INEC? Oh, because they're what? The
point is that, see, your electoral process determines the credibility or the integrity of your governance, of your democracy.
But those people are part of the system that does not have an integrity.
Again, that's why we're saying it now, because there must be some committee or whatever that's doing oversight function over INEC. That's basic. You know, if they're not doing the oversight function over INEC, the populace should be able to raise. We do a lot of tweets and all those things and social media activities. Some of this needs to be focused, you know, in such a way that if I am an NGO working in that area of election credibility, you know, I must be able to aggregate and draw people to some of these shortcomings in such a way that we can then give necessary punch to INEC to stand up. If they know that if I do anything, nothing is going to happen, they'll just keep messing up every time.
Now, talking about keeping everybody on their toes, don't you also expect that other state actors as well mimic what the president has done? This is the second occasion. He turned up at his polling unit right on time, 8 a.m. He was there with his wife. Now, if we have the governor of Lagos State, the outgoing governor of Lagos State, we have other state actors, political actors here and there, present at the polling units, don't you think that would also force the INEC officials who are supposed to be present there to ensure that they're there? Because once a few calls are being made that person XYZ is already close by or has arrived, then they will be forced to appear right on time.
I quite agree that can be a kind of visual, a good visual.
Since Marianne termed it plain eye service.
Yes.
Eye service would help us put our acts together.
A good visual, you know, for press, for everybody that, oh, the governor is here and that. But the point is this, when you want to measure the quality of any intervention or even program or even anything that you're doing,
board,
you must be able to look at the disadvantaged. You know, when the man who is disabled gets to that place, is he voting? When the man who is poor gets to that place, is he voting appropriately? Is he being respected? It's not just about looking at the top and the person who can exert power alone, because everyone has just one vote to cast. We must be able to up the ante in terms of doing the oversight function. The oversight function may not be left to those resident people alone. In a way, we are doing some here now. We must be able to talk and say that, listen, this INEC REC or whatever INEC officials cannot function in this place again, because during the last election, he performed woefully.
And one of the reports that we also had from the persons with disabilities was the fact that the election, at the end of the day, when it now got heightened at the point that there were throngs of people, they weren't necessarily attended to. It was a little bit rowdy. Some of them were pushed and shoved and all of this. You know, we have people who have mobility challenges, visual impairment, and a whole lot more.
So it's a mixed crowd.
Exactly. And they called for, well, just having this separate queue does not do anything for us at all, because at the end of the day, when things get heated and it's full of crowd, we get lost in the mix. So instead, we should have a totally separate area where they get to vote. Do you think their call has any bit of relevance that we should be looking into?
Because, you know, let's look at it.
Because their votes count as well.
Yeah, because let's look at it. Even in a place where proper structures are put in place, you have a parking lot for disabled people, you have a specialized staircase for disabled people, even in terms of education. Yes, we must be able to create that advantage for them, even in an electoral process. You don't expect them to be part of the crowd, you know, running around here and there. We should be able to do that. And for us, the time we're going to really test that we're going to be satisfied that our electoral process is going very well is when we see that, as the president is casting his votes first time, we're also seeing a disadvantaged person also having an advantage to cast
his votes.
His or her votes. So it's important. We need to look at their peculiar needs and assist them in such. Because if somebody is visually impaired, you don't expect him to have the same visual acuity with probably.
No, but that person is there with his or her aid or assistance.
Yes.
Some don't have aid and assistance.
So these are the aid and assistance should be provided by INEC, not the person needed to bring somebody to assist him. There must be a structure within the system or the INEC that will allow such a person to vote and take his own informed decision, as it were.
Well, Dr. Tui, unfortunately we have to let you go, but it's been a very interesting segment talking about INEC's preparedness, security concerns, and of course the polling units as to who's gotten there, who's voted, and who hasn't.
Dr. Tui is going to vote as well.
Yes, I'm going to vote.
Send us a picture as well. Let us know how it goes on there.
Tweet at Plus TV. We need to see you vote, and we need to see the indelible ink on your top.
You will see.
Send us all the short videos as much as possible.
All right, Dr. Tui Mebawonu has been with us. It's very difficult to pronounce your name. You have to teach me how to do it.
Yeah, I'm sure you can pronounce Swaziniga and all those lengthy names.
Thank you so much for coming, Dr. Tui.
Okay, my pleasure.
Good luck with the voting. We'll take a short break, and when we come back, this is still Nigeria Decides, and there's lots to talk about. We're spreading our tentacles all across the country, and we will try as much as possible to feed you with information. But you who's watching us from your home, from your tablets, from your phones, let us know what is happening in your area, the good, the bad, the ugly. We hope it's just mostly good. Plus TV Africa, you can join us on WhatsApp. The number is on your screen right now. Or better still, you can follow us on every other platform on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and of course, you could also comment on our live YouTube page. We want to hear from you.
And it's also important that you have to follow the 7-step flow. Remember how to ensure that the ink doesn't surpass where it's supposed to be. Don't go anywhere.